Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Karen answered her doorbell to find a woman in her 60s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her silver hair was pulled back in a style that suggested serious money and serious power. "Ms. Whitfield, I'm Judith Blackwell. I believe you received my message last night." Karen's real estate instincts immediately kicked in. This woman screamed high-end property development. "Please come in. Coffee? Thank you." Judith settled into Karen's living room like she belonged there, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. "I represent a consortium of investors interested in your unique approach to community relations. I'm not sure I follow." Judith smiled, and Karen recognized the expression. It was the same calculating look she saw in her own mirror every morning. "We've been watching Willowbrook Estates for some time. Prime real estate, aging infrastructure, a homeowners association that's never dealt with serious legal challenges. The kind of community that's ripe for improvement." Karen set down her coffee cup carefully. "What kind of improvement?" "The kind that starts with residents questioning their current leadership's competence." Judith opened a leather portfolio. "You've done excellent groundwork, exposing selective rule enforcement, uncovering safety violations, demonstrating that the current board is reactive rather than proactive. That wasn't groundwork for anything. I was just defending my right to use the pool." "Were you?" Judith's smile widened. "Because from where I sit, it looks like you've systematically dismantled the HOA's authority structure in less than a week. Very impressive for someone who just wanted to take a business call." Karen felt a chill that had nothing to do with her air conditioning. "Who exactly do you represent?" "Meridian Development Group. We specialize in community revitalization projects. Aging HOAs often struggle with infrastructure costs, legal compliance, resident satisfaction. We step in, provide capital improvements, modernize governance structures, and make a profit doing it. Naturally. But everyone benefits. Residents get updated amenities, professional management, increased property values. We get a reasonable return on investment." Karen stood up, her real estate experience finally connecting the dots. "You want to buy out the HOA and convert Willowbrook into a profit-driven community management company. Eventually, but first, we need residents to lose faith in volunteer governance. Your little pool demonstration was perfect. It showed how easily amateur leadership crumbles under pressure." The casual way Judith discussed manipulating Karen's neighbors made her stomach turn. "I never agreed to help you with anything. Not consciously, perhaps. But you've been remarkably effective." Judith closed her portfolio. "We'd like to offer you a position as community liaison when we take over. Excellent salary, full benefits, and you'd be helping your neighbors transition to professional management." Karen walked to her front door and opened it. "I think you should leave." Judith stood gracefully, not seeming surprised by the dismissal. "Consider our offer, Ms. Whitfield. Your neighbors are going to need someone they trust to help them navigate the changes ahead. Whether you work with us or not, Meridian has invested too much in this project to walk away now." After Judith left, Karen sat in her kitchen, staring at her phone. She could call Meredith, warn her about Meridian's plans. But would anyone believe her? Or would they think it was just another one of Karen's schemes? Her laptop chimed with a new email from Dave Martinez, the HOA treasurer. "Karen, need to discuss something urgent. The insurance company called with questions about our policy history. They want to know if we've had previous undisclosed safety violations. Can you meet tomorrow morning?" Karen's blood went cold. If Meridian had been watching Willowbrook for months, they would have done their research. They'd know about every code violation, every ignored maintenance issue, every corner the HOA board had cut over the years. Her insurance gambit hadn't uncovered problems. It had provided the perfect excuse for Meridian to move forward with their takeover plan. She grabbed her car keys and headed for the door. Dave Martinez lived 3 streets over, and this conversation couldn't wait until tomorrow morning. But as Karen backed out of her driveway, she noticed a black sedan parked across the street that hadn't been there an hour ago. In the passenger seat, a figure was taking photographs of her house. Karen realized with growing dread that her war with the HOA board had been just the opening move in a much larger game, one where she might have been playing on the wrong side all along. The question was it too late to switch teams? By Thursday morning, Karen had filed 17 separate complaints with the HOA board, each one meticulously documented and legally bulletproof. She'd discovered that Meredith's prized rose garden extended 2.3 inches beyond her property line into common area. The Johnsons' mailbox was painted colonial blue instead of the approved heritage navy. Mrs. Patterson's garden gnome exceeded the maximum allowable lawn ornament height by half an inch, but Karen was just getting started. She arrived at the monthly HOA board meeting carrying a briefcase that looked like it could store nuclear launch codes. The community center had never seen such attendance. Word had spread through the neighborhood faster than gossip at a book club meeting. Residents packed the folding chairs, whispering nervously as Karen set up what appeared to be a full legal presentation at the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent years convincing people to buy houses they couldn't afford, "I've discovered some very interesting inconsistencies in how our community rules are enforced." Meredith shifted uncomfortably in her board president chair. "Karen, this meeting is to address your violations from Monday morning." "Oh, we'll get to that," Karen interrupted, clicking to her first slide. "But first, let's discuss Section 12.7 of our bylaws, which states that any structure exceeding 6 feet in height requires board approval." She advanced to a photograph of the Hendersons' tree house. "I measured this myself. 6 feet, 4 inches. Where's the approval paperwork?" Tom Henderson, a quiet accountant who'd built the tree house for his 8-year-old daughter, looked like he wanted to disappear into his folding chair. "It's just a kid's playhouse, Karen. Come on." "Rules don't make exceptions for cuteness, Tom." Karen's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Next slide." Mrs. Wilson's unauthorized vegetable garden in the common area behind her unit. Elderly Mrs. Wilson, who'd been growing tomatoes in the same spot for 15 years, clutched her purse defensively. "Nobody ever complained before." "That's exactly the problem," Karen continued. "Selective enforcement creates legal liability for the HOA. Either we follow all the rules or we follow none of them." The room erupted in nervous chatter. Karen let it build for a moment before clicking to her final slide. And now the big one. Section 3.04 states that any modification to common areas requires a vote by at least 60% of homeowners. When exactly did we vote to install that new playground equipment last spring? Board Treasurer Dave Martinez looked sick. "We used emergency funds for safety updates. The old equipment was recalled." Without a vote, Karen pressed. "Which means every child who's used that playground has been trespassing on an unauthorized structure." She closed her laptop with a dramatic snap. "I'm prepared to withdraw all my complaints in exchange for a formal apology and the withdrawal of any sanctions against my business activities." The room fell silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and someone's nervous cough. Meredith's face had gone from tennis court white to liability lawsuit red. "You can't be serious," Meredith finally whispered. Karen packed her briefcase with military precision. "I have appointments to show houses tomorrow, Meredith, but I suggest the board consider my proposal carefully. Because if you think I'm unreasonable now, wait until I start examining the HOA's financial records for compliance violations." As Karen walked toward the exit, she paused at Mrs. Wilson's chair. "I actually love your tomatoes, Eleanor. The community garden was my idea 3 years ago, but it got voted down because someone thought it would attract undesirable wildlife." She glanced meaningfully at Meredith before continuing toward the door. "Votes next Thursday," she called over her shoulder. "I'll bring refreshments." The community center remained silent for a full minute after Karen left. Finally, Tom Henderson spoke up. "Did she just threaten to audit our finances while offering to bring snacks?" Meredith stared at the door where Karen had exited, a mixture of fear and grudging respect flickering across her face. "I think," she said slowly, "we may have underestimated Karen Whitfield." Outside, Karen sat in her Mercedes, making notes on her phone. Phase 1 was complete, but as she scrolled through her research, she'd uncovered something far more interesting than height violations and unauthorized gardens. The HOA's insurance policy had a very specific clause about community pool accidents and liability, and Karen's laptop incident had been recorded by the pool's security cameras. Tomorrow, she'd make some very interesting phone calls. Karen's Friday morning began with a call to Pinnacle Property Insurance at exactly 8:00 a.m. She'd spent the night reviewing the HOA's policy documents, publicly available records that apparently no one else had bothered to read in detail. Mr. Rodriguez? This is Karen Whitfield from Willowbrook Estates. I need to report a potential liability incident involving electrical equipment failure in our community pool area. The insurance representative's voice immediately sharpened with professional concern. Was anyone injured, ma'am? Fortunately, no. But I have security footage of the incident, and I'm concerned about the pool's electrical safety systems. My laptop was damaged due to what appears to be inadequate GFCA protection near the water features. Karen wasn't lying. Technically, the pool's ground fault circuit interrupter should have prevented any electrical device from operating near the water. The fact that her laptop had worked for 17 minutes before shorting out suggested a serious safety violation. I'll need to send an inspector immediately, Rodriguez said. Can you provide access to the pool area and the security footage? Of course, I'm very concerned about community safety. Karen's voice carried just the right note of civic responsibility. I'd hate for a child to be injured because of inadequate electrical protections. 2 hours later, Karen stood poolside with Inspector Janet Liu, watching as the woman documented multiple code violations with increasing alarm. The GFCI outlets hadn't been tested in 18 months. The pool's lighting system used outdated wiring. Most damning of all, the underwater speakers that played soft jazz during relaxation hours weren't properly sealed against moisture infiltration. Mrs. Whitfield, this is a disaster waiting to happen, Liu said, making notes on her tablet. How long has the HOA known about these issues? I only discovered them after my incident, Karen replied innocently. I brought them to the board's attention, but they seemed more concerned with pool usage schedules than safety compliance. Liu photographed everything, including the security camera footage Karen helpfully provided. In the video, Karen's laptop malfunction looked less like karma and more like evidence of dangerous electrical conditions that could have killed someone. By noon, Pinnacle Insurance had delivered an ultimatum to the HOA board: fix every electrical violation within 30 days or lose coverage entirely. The estimated repair cost was $47,000. Karen's phone rang as she finished her lunch. You did this. Meredith's voice was tight with controlled fury. Somehow, you orchestrated this entire situation. I reported a safety hazard, Meredith. Would you have preferred I waited until someone got electrocuted? Karen sipped her iced tea calmly. Although I do think this puts our little pool rules dispute in perspective, don't you? The board is meeting in emergency session tonight. We need to discuss assessment options for the repairs. Actually, Karen said, I may have a solution that doesn't require any homeowner assessments, but it would require some flexibility regarding pool usage policies. The silence stretched long enough for Karen to count 3 cars passing her kitchen window. What kind of solution? Meredith finally asked. Karen smiled at her reflection in the window. Well, it turns out I have some contacts in commercial electrical contracting. I could probably get the work done for about half the quoted price. Professional courtesy, you understand. And in exchange, the board formally acknowledges that current pool rules were overly restrictive and amends them to allow reasonable business use during expanded hours. Plus, I get to implement my community garden proposal from 3 years ago. Karen, you can't seriously be holding community safety hostage for your pet projects. Karen Whitfield stood waist-deep in the Willowbrook Estates community pool at 5:47 a.m. Wearing a full business suit, her laptop balanced precariously on a pool float as she conducted a Zoom meeting with clients in Tokyo. Water dripped from her blazer sleeves onto the keyboard, but she didn't flinch. The pool rules clearly stated no electronics near water and pool hours. 6 a.m., 10 p.m. But Karen had never been one to let technicalities interfere with her schedule. As I was saying, Mr. Yamamoto, she spoke into her wireless headset, completely oblivious to the morning joggers who had stopped to stare through the fence. Our Q3 projections show. Excuse me. The sharp voice of Meredith Chen, HOA board president, cut through the morning air like a lifeguard's whistle. She stood at the pool gate in her pristine white tennis outfit, clutching a laminated copy of the community bylaws. The pool doesn't open for another 13 minutes, and you're in direct violation of at least 4 separate regulations. Karen didn't even look up from her laptop screen. I'm conducting international business, Meredith. Some of us contribute to the local economy. She clicked through another PowerPoint slide. Her heels. Yes, she was wearing heels in the pool, scraping against the concrete bottom. You're wearing shoes in the pool. Meredith's voice cracked with indignation. And that's a wool suit. Do you have any idea what dry cleaning chemicals do to our filtration system? The Tokyo clients on Karen's screen looked confused as the camera shook. Karen finally turned, her perfectly styled blonde hair somehow still immaculate despite the humid pool environment. My property taxes pay for this pool, Meredith. I'll use it when I need to use it. Besides, I checked the bylaws. There's nothing that specifically prohibits conducting business meetings in the water. Meredith's face turned the same shade as the emergency life preserver. She began flipping through her laminated pages with the fury of someone who'd memorized every semicolon in the HOA Constitution. Section 4.32 clearly states that the pool area is for recreational swimming and approved aquatic activities only. And how? Karen asked with a cold smile that had made her the most feared real estate agent in 3 counties. Do you define recreational? I find international commerce quite recreational. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, but at that moment, Karen's laptop chose to short-circuit. Sparks flew from the keyboard, the screen went black, and the pool float began to deflate with a sad wheezing sound. Karen's Tokyo clients disappeared into digital oblivion, just as she lost her balance and went completely underwater, business suit and all. When she surfaced, sputtering and furious, Meredith was already photographing the scene with her phone. That's destruction of community property, Karen. The board will hear about this. Karen stood in the shallow end, her suit clinging to her like a wet business card, mascara creating abstract art down her cheeks. But instead of retreating, her eyes narrowed with the calculating look that had closed 1,000 difficult deals. Fine, Meredith. If you want to play by the rules, let's play by all the rules. That afternoon, Karen sat in her home office, surrounded by legal books, HOA documents, and 3 different laptops. She'd learned her lesson about poolside electronics. She'd spent 6 hours researching every bylaw, every precedent, every loophole in Willowbrook Estate's governing documents. What she found was about to turn their pristine suburban paradise upside down. I'm offering to save this community $23,000 while improving our amenities, Karen interrupted. But I understand if the board prefers to stick with principle over pragmatism. I'm sure the homeowners will appreciate the special assessment notices just in time for the holidays. That evening, Karen received a text message. Emergency board meeting approved your proposals 4-1. Contracts available for review Monday. Karen set down her phone and walked to her back deck, which offered a perfect view of the community pool. In the distance, she could see lights on in houses throughout Willowbrook Estates, neighbors probably discussing the day's dramatic developments, wondering how their quiet suburban routine had been turned upside down by one woman's poolside Zoom call. But as Karen watched the sunset reflect off the pool's surface, she felt something unexpected, a twinge of guilt. Eleanor Wilson had looked genuinely frightened during the board meeting. Tom Henderson's daughter had asked her father why the mean lady wanted to tear down her tree house. Karen had always prided herself on getting results, but maybe, just maybe, she'd pushed too hard this time. The insurance gambit had been brilliant, but was it fair? Her phone buzzed with another message, this one from an unknown number. Saw what you did at the meeting. Impressive work. We should talk. JV. Karen stared at the cryptic message, her satisfaction suddenly clouded by unease. Who was JB? And how did they get her number? More importantly, what did they want to talk about? As she headed inside to research electrical contractors, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that her victory might have attracted the wrong kind of attention.